Now you may see currently we have a heat wave in London, and my room is currently infested with like 7 flies, which I don't know where they came from, but they are in now. So yeah, that's that's going in the bloopers, I suppose. Hello, everybody, and welcome to a new episode of the Indie Diarist podcast. This is Anthony L. Wolf, your loyal Indie Diarist, writer, narrative designer, senior content manager, everything that you guys already know. I won't steal too much time from you. I just want you to know that by the time this episode goes live, the Kickstarter campaign for Kristala, the game by Astral Clocktower Studios, the guests of this episode will be live, or at least will be getting ready to go live. So make sure to follow Astral Clocktower Studios on Twitter, head over to their Kickstarter page, and please show them some support. Now on to the episode. Hello everybody, and welcome to a new episode of the Indie Diarist podcast. Today with you is your usual and loyal Indie Diarist, Anthony L. Wolf. And today with me are actually 3 very special guests from the indie game dev community, and there are 3 developers from the same studio, which is Astral Clocktower Studio. And you will tell me a little bit about the story behind that name. I think I remember where it comes from, but please feel free to tell me a little bit about yourselves individually. I guess we'll start with Sarah.
Sure, yeah, we can do that. So I am Sarah. I'm one of the owners of Astral Clocktower Studios, and as much as I'd like to be, I am not a developer. I'm actually our marketing director. So I handle everything related to the Astral Clocktower Studios and Kristala brands, from marketing and community management to running Patreon, setting things up for our upcoming Kickstarter, all that fun stuff.
And I'm Allie. I'm our one of the owners, obviously, like all 3 of us are owners. And I'm also our producer and business manager. And I used to be more of a dev than I am now. Now I just direct the devs.
Okay.
And
Lastly,
I am
Tiffany.
Tiffany. I one of the owners, obviously, and I do level design too, as well.
Right. Okay. Yeah. So it's a really nice studio that you got there. I can see there's structure, and you've got layers and such. So how big is the studio actually? How many people are you?
We have 32 devs right now, including ourselves.
Nice. Yeah, that's nice and packed studio. Must be really nice to work with so many people. I think most of the people that come to this podcast, I think they are either solo devs or they have a very small team of maybe 15 people. So you're doubling that, which is really interesting. So I'd like to start these episodes with a little icebreaker, which is what's one game that you think everybody should play at least once? And we can go for one each. So feel free to jump in.
Well, I'm just going to go with the obvious and say Bloodborne.
Right.
Yeah, I was gonna say you had asked about our studio name, Allie. We didn't actually answer that. You should.
Well, yeah, Bloodborne is one of my favorite games. I like a lot of the FromSoft games, but I particularly like Bloodborne. It's one of the things that it's one of the games that inspired me to become a game dev. I was a software developer before I did this. And my favorite boss fight in Bloodborne is Lady Maria of the Astral Clocktower. Mm-hmm. Now, you can spam her, but if you don't spam her, her fight's really good.
Yeah, I remember that. Yeah.
So that's why we
boss fights there.
Yeah, she's really fast, and she's got really cool moveset, and I just think she's awesome. Mm-hmm. So we had a few names that we were bouncing around in the beginning, but then we ended up landing on that one.
That one stuck.
Yeah.
So I suppose all 3 of you are big Bloodborne fans and software fans.
It's me. Okay.
It's mostly Allie.
Definitely is. Okay.
Yes, we don't dislike those games. I haven't played a ton of them, but obviously knowing Allie and working with the studio, I really have come to love just the formula behind studying the combat and
right.
When you approach a new enemy or boss and there's a strategy behind that. So I really, really respect that about those games.
Same. I love figuring out the strategies of the boss fights and then still dying like 4 million times because I'm not very good at Souls games, but they're fun. So.
There are a lot of devs on our team that do love these games.
Yes.
Yes. We got you three here today, but yeah, Tiffany, you're doing level design anyway, so you don't have to worry about all the combat bits and all that. So
I literally go in there, kill everyone, and then test the whole environment.
Yeah,
so,
there you go. Yes,
I'm great at our game because they all die like that. So.
And that's one thing. And of course, we'll have a chance to talk about Kristala a bit more later. But that's one thing that I liked about the game, the demo that I tried out, which is the use of the jump mechanic, which you don't, apart from Elden Ring, of course, which kind of reintroduced it alongside Sekiro. You don't really see it in a lot of the Souls games that way, as in you're actually doing platforming, exploration, and all of that. So that already looks a bit promising. You can do some interesting environmental puzzles and environmental design with it. So yeah, but I guess, Ali, you mentioned your favorite game. What about you two?
Go ahead, Tiff.
I am very partial to The Witcher. I love the lore. I love, as a level designer too, like that game to me is gorgeous. So yeah, The Witcher, specifically The Witcher 3. So, all-time favorite.
Nice. And for me, I feel like I say this answer all the time when I get this question, but the Ori games from Moon Studios.
Oh, yeah.
They really just encapsulate everything I love about gaming, from like good combat and fantasy storytelling to like the eye-catching art style, and the soundtrack is fantastic. I definitely cried after beating
I remember the first time I played an Ori game. It was my old computer, but still, that main menu, when you hear the music, you're like, okay, this is going to be a ride. This is going to be a journey. I can't wait for it. And yeah, Ori 2 delivered on that too. So yeah, that was definitely... You mentioned some of my favorite games, totally. Bloodborne is definitely my favorite out of all the Souls. But because I like Gothic horror and Lovecraftian stuff and all of that. The Witcher 3 has been my favorite for a long time. Although actually in Kristala I can see, I don't know if this is direct or indirect, but in that demo that I played, I recognized more of the style of The Witcher 1, as in terms of art, not necessarily, of course, the technical aspect, than The Witcher 3. I think it felt a lot darker. It felt a lot more closed up, and all that forestry and stuff. It's something that I remember very fondly from the first The Witcher, more than the others. So I don't know if that's intentional.
Not really, but I mean, I feel like maybe subconsciously a little.
Yeah, right,
who knows? But we have a lot, just having such a diverse group of people too. I think that we take in a lot of different influences as far as the game. Just the game period. So maybe that's where that's coming from.
True. We get a lot of questions like that where I'm like, actually, I don't know. Somebody had a really good idea. I mean,
at some point it just made it into the game. So yeah. Right. But yeah, so you mentioned action RPGs. You mentioned even a platformer in your case, Sarah. But which games do you remember playing growing up, and do you think they had an influence on what you're doing now?
I had a Super Nintendo and I had a PlayStation 1. My PlayStation 1 only had one game on it. It was Gran Turismo. So my brother and I would just race each other all the time until we got sick of it. And then but I had a lot more games on my Super Nintendo, and I played Diablo on the computer and Civilization. So,
Civilization,
yeah, I would play that obsessively because I had this really old, crappy computer with Civ 1 on it for years, so I just played it every day. Yeah, the original Civ game. So that but the games I played the most were probably the Mario games and Street Fighter 2, and I played that even into adulthood. I hung on to my Super Nintendo probably until a couple of years ago when it went missing during a move. Which kind of sucked. That was a bummer.
Oh, no.
It was the same one I had from when I was a kid. I still have all the games and the controllers, but the system's gone. Which is a bummer.
I still have one.
Oh, well, that's good. I'll come bring you my games. But yeah, so I played the most probably Mario 3. I think Mario 3 is the best one. I know, every shortcut, I beat that game 100 times. And today, I honestly, I will say that I've always had a taste for games that challenge me. I want to do the same thing 20,000 times over and over again. Maybe related to just being a person who lives with ADHD. I enjoy repetitive things, so maybe that's why I don't mind dying to the same boss 80 times, like I did in Wolong Fallen Dynasty on the first boss.
I haven't played that one yet, but I've seen a friend of mine live stream it. Yeah.
I've never had a game like that challenge me quite as heavily as that one in the beginning.
Well,
After that, every other fight was not that hard, but that first fight...
I hear that's a big roadblock for a lot of people. But also the first boss in Elden Ring has been like that for a lot of people. Like the first major boss, Margit. I remember a lot of people got stuck there. But yeah. No, but actually, this reminds me of something that happened literally just yesterday. I went to an event here in London, which is the LCC showcase from the London College of Communication, and there was the game design course there, and there was a game made by someone that was designed to be trial and error and stupidly difficult. Like every single level was a different letter of the alphabet. The final boss was supposed to be the Z or Z, depending on where you're from. And at some point he told me, but actually there are all the impossible levels, and only one person, one human being that I know has ever been able to beat it. So yeah, I just decided to stay there for about an hour and until I actually beat the entire thing. So yeah, that was 333 deaths later, but I managed.
So you understand, yeah? I love that. Yeah. I did that with the Lost Levels. I think that's actually what it was like originally Mario 2 in Japan, and then we got some weird version here in the States. But it really was more difficult. And I remember there was one level I got stuck on, like it was like one of the boss levels, and I got stuck on that for I think weeks, and I would just try every day over and over and over again until I finally got it, and then I couldn't even believe I'd gotten it. It was like it wasn't real after that. But yeah, so I guess I've always been this way.
I think the Souls game unlocked that one for me. But yeah, what about Sarah and Tiffany? What do you remember playing growing up?
One of the things, the Sega Genesis was like my childhood. That's like the one thing that sticks out the most to me. And I remember playing Toe Jam and Earl with my brother. Do you remember that game? It's ridiculous, and I
do love that game. Let me look that up.
Oh,
it's so weird.
Please do. It's great, so weird. It's so good. It's so good.
Yeah. I'm surprised I remember it.
Right? And the music was weird, and like
everything about it was weird.
Didn't they like burp and fart and like weird?
Oh yeah, they were super gross. They're Toe Jam and Earl. So yeah.
So, yeah, they were like these like aliens that were just. That game, I love that game. I probably would still play that game, honestly.
It looks very silly, which I love.
It's wonderful. It's wonderful. You know, and like as a very young person, I don't even remember how old I was, to be honest.
It's a whole franchise? Oh, no, wait, I see Toe Jam and Earl 3. Okay.
Yeah. Yeah. It's wonderful.
All right, okay. So, I'll check it out then, yeah.
Yeah. That and Echo, that game that you play as a dolphin. I tried to play that again as an adult, and I can't even get past like the first level. I was like, "How was I good at this game?" I beat it as a kid.
You beat it as a kid?
I beat it as a kid. I put a lot of hours into that game.
Right? Yeah.
But
it
now
sounds like
I'm
we were the same kind of kid.
Yes. Tenacious. Yeah, but I tried to play it, and I was so frustrated. I was like, "Forget this. This is not good for me right now." So yes, those two games really. I
bet Allie maybe would be able to beat it, but yeah.
You should try it.
I've heard it's really difficult.
It's
that game, yeah.
hard. It's so hard.
It'll be on my to-do list.
Yes.
Perfect. What about you, Sarah?
Yeah, so I also had the Super Nintendo, and I had an N64 on the SNES. The Donkey Kongs 1 through 3 were like my jam, and I guess I also had a penchant for punishment because the Lion King game on Super Nintendo was like so hard. And I admit I used the berry cheat a lot because I would.
So you did get past the level with all the animals. I can't wait to be king. Yeah, all right. Yeah.
Yeah, that one I could beat the first 3 pretty easily. Is the one where like lava dripped from the ceiling. Right. That was really hard for me. Yeah, that game is really hard. And then on the N64, Yoshi's Story was my jam. I don't know. I just loved that game. Of course, we had like the Marios and everything, like you said, Allie. But those Donkey Kongs and Yoshi's Story were probably my favorite, like nostalgic growing up games.
Well, Yoshi's cute, but I can tell that this group loves challenging games. That's why you probably are working on Kristala right now. So, well, I've got a bit of a more personal question for you all. When did you realize you wanted to work in games? Like, was there something like an aha moment for you when you suddenly realized that, this is what I want to do, or did it just happen over time?
For me, at the time, I mentioned before, I was working as a software developer, and I hated it. I was miserable. I really hated it. But I was a single mom, and I needed something to pay the bills. And so I did that thing. I went and did the thing that kind of sucked that made good money. And then once I was doing that, I found myself getting a lot more into gaming again. I had like gone on kind of a hiatus for a few years, and then I got back into it. And I got a PS4 because I was like anticipating The Last of Us Part 2 ever happening. And then so I was like, well, I gotta get something to play. So I got Bloodborne, and that's actually what introduced me to the Souls series. After playing it for a while and getting into a bunch of other games at the same time, I think it was like Fallout 4 and then The Last of Us, like I mentioned. I was like, I've always thought it was kind of unrealistic to get into. Like, I was told repeatedly that the fields like in the arts or in gaming, for example, which is like a mix of art and tech, are kind of like not viable, right? There's the whole starving artist trope. So that's why I went for something that was painfully boring instead. And at least for me. I don't think it's that way for everybody, but for me it was. And so I just had a moment there where I was like, well, I'm in the position where I could probably handle going back to school. I tried to start teaching myself at first and realized that if I didn't have something that was like pushing me to do it, that I was never going to have the energy to do it. But if there's like the risk of defaulting on a loan, then hey, I might as well finish school. So yeah, that pretty much playing Bloodborne and then just getting to the point of where I couldn't, like, I would be miserable every day. Like, driving to work, I would want to cry. Coming home from work, I wanted to cry. So it was really helpful to have something that was like the light at the end of the tunnel. Like, I only have to do this for this much longer, and then someday I can have a fun job. And so that's, I actually did it. I'm here now, so that's pretty sweet.
Man, everything worked out in the end, yet.
Yeah.
It was perfect timing, too. Because that's where we met.
Yeah.
We met in school. So.
All right.
It all worked out for a reason.
I can see we have a fifth guest on the show now.
Oh, yes.
Well, of course, the listeners won't be able to. Because the listeners won't be able to see her, but yeah.
Hopefully she stays quiet.
Yeah.
She was being pretty good. I was impressed. Good job, Iris.
She was eating, so,
Yeah. So, what about you, Tiffany and Sarah? Like, what made you realize that you wanted to do this?
Mine was my dad. So, in a roundabout way. I had always thought it would be really cool. Level design was always kind of like, I was very intrigued by it, but never really thought about it as a career. Kind of did the typical, like, let me go to college right after high school. Didn't really know what I wanted to do. I was actually like a pre-law when I went into college originally. Because my aunt was like my hero, and she still is, but she's a lawyer, and I was just, she's so cool. That's what I want to do. It's not what I wanted to do, turns out. It was so boring, not for me. Then I decided, I love animals. Let me get into, as she's talking, you two, her too. So I love animals, and so I was like, well, I think I want to be a vet. And so I actually got a job, and I was a veterinary technician for like 15, 20 years. Right. Also not my thing. So I'm just talking to my dad, and I was just like, I just don't know. I don't know what I really want, like what would be really fun. And we started talking about it, and he was just like, well, what about, he actually recommended graphic design. And I was like, okay, I like being creative. And he's like, you love being creative. Like that's, that's your thing. And so then I started down that, rabbit hole, and landed on level design. So went to school for it, and still love it. So, guess I'm doing something right. So
Found the thing.
Yeah. Long story short, here we are. So.
Right. Yeah.
And for me, I'm sorry, were you going to expound?
No, I was going to hand it over to you guys.
Okay, cool. For me, I'm actually interesting because I didn't really have aspirations to work in gaming until I met Allie at that software programming job she was talking about. I was marketing there. I've always wanted to be a marketer. I went to school for that, but it wasn't until I met her and we became fast friends. And she told me that she and Tiffany were starting a studio and that they wanted to focus on marketing from the beginning. So they said, hey, do you want to join us? And I was like, you know what? Yeah, I do. I do want to do that. But it's interesting because now that I've been doing this for 5 years, I literally cannot imagine marketing in any other space. It's so much fun. You can be super loose and free with the brand voice. And then also creative, like you were talking about, Tiff. So it's so fun. I'm so glad I'm here. I really, really can't imagine doing anything else.
Yeah.
Yeah, and if I look at your Twitter profile, which is AC, let me just find it again, ACS_games for anyone listening. You've got nearly 7,000 followers. You're definitely doing a great job there. So you're definitely having fun and getting results, which is great. So, but yeah, actually, we have really interesting range of stories here. Someone who tried a lot of things before realizing what they wanted to do. Someone else who tried the job that would be better paid and then realized that they wanted to do something creative. And then, Sarah was having a lot of fun with marketing. I mean, there's a lot of experiences here coming together to create this the studio and this game and this idea, this vision that you guys have, which is just really inspiring. And actually, a lot of people do stumble upon certain creative careers just by chance. I've heard yesterday someone saying that they became a producer just because they met someone who needed a music video producer, and then now they've been doing it for 15 years. So it's these things happen, and then usually the things that happen by chance are the most interesting in these cases. But yeah, now moving on to actually what led to the foundation of your studio. What is the story behind Astral Clocktower Studio? Because Tiffany, you mentioned that you met Allie in school. How did it come to be?
You want me to take it, Tiff? Okay, so Tiffany and I were both working on bachelor's degrees in game programming, which is kind of funny because she's a level designer and I'm a producer now, and neither of us are programmers. But I actually, when we first started the studio, I was our lead programmer, and which made sense because I was a software programmer. That's why I went for it, even though I didn't even like programming. But anyway, Tiffany and I were put together in a group project, and she was actually the first other woman I'd met in the entire program. So I was like, oh my God, hey, we should be friends. And and we worked really well together. So, after the project was over, I wrote her on Discord, and I was like, I want to keep making games because I feel like I'm learning a lot more from that than just the school normal format for school. It's just the school can only teach you so much. You really learn the most from actually doing. So initially we were like, we sat down and we talked about what we wanted to do. I had actually, right before that, I had volunteered my time working at this indie studio. I don't know if it even exists anymore. Where this guy had managed to recruit something like 35 developers to all volunteer and work for him, that he split into these little teams to make little games. And then he himself wasn't a dev and didn't really know a lot about development. So not a lot got done. And it was I remember thinking at the time, I could do so much better at this. I can't believe he's wasting this resource. He has 35 devs and there's no games that are happening. So, that was kind of what inspired me to maybe I should start my own thing. But so we met, we talked about, we sat down and we talked over what we might want to do together. And originally she and I came to the conclusion that we would do like a small adventure cat game. Like, we were trying to be reasonable because we both presented ideas to each other of what kind of game we'd make together, and I'm like, let's make some Dark Souls like hellscape game. And I don't want to get too into it because I would like to make it someday. And she said she wanted to make this adventure game for a cat that was like a 2D side-scroller adventure for a cat who would gain his wings in the end because she was a big fan of the fairy tale anime franchise. And so we were like, yeah, that makes a lot more sense to do. Let's do that. And then we started collecting volunteers, and we got a couple of other developers. And that was originally like I think like the first year we did, I don't know, it started just morphing from that more into like my idea too. So like it was like, well, you know what, actually we just went to school and learned all this stuff in 3D, so doing 2D would be a little weird, so let's go to 3D. I don't even know how we ended up making this transition, but essentially we ended up making the game that was like the intersection between these two games. There was for a while we held on to the wing thing, and then eventually we dropped that. Didn't make sense anymore.
Didn't make sense.
Yeah. But yeah, so we spent like a good year or two figuring out exactly what we were going to be doing. I mean, prototyping. We made this like. Eventually, we made this like silly little prototype in Unreal 4 with a cat that looked like a fox, and like a bunch of like stand-in rat enemies, and in like a swampy place. And then we just kept kind of building on that. But and I forgot the part where we met Sarah.
I touched on it a little already.
Yeah.
A little bit.
Yeah. So yeah. Sarah, Tiffany, and I were like, cool. We're gonna do this thing together. We started, coming up with names and whatever. And then I found a cat outside of a doctor's appointment, and I was talking about him at work. And then Sarah poked her little head up. She's like, "Oh, a cat!" She wanted to talk about. She was like, "I love cats," and that's how we ended up being friends, which is so funny because
connected over cats.
Yeah. Now we're making this cat game together.
I feel like that's appropriate.
So appropriate. And then I knew Sarah for maybe a day, and I was like, "You should be our third partner because I like you."
Real did like I don't. Do you ever like meet, especially as you get older, you like meet somebody and you just like. It's rare. That's what I meant by especially as you get older. But it's rare that you meet somebody and you just immedially, I don't know, like my soul recognized yours or something. It was so weird. We just were like
instant best friend.
Yeah, it was awesome.
Yeah, it was awesome. It was awesome. I'm glad you decided to say yes because I know I was very forward.
Right. Well, and I guess you had a lot of struggles setting up the studio and all of that. But being like an indie game development studio online, what is your biggest challenge at the moment? What would you say?
Okay, so the biggest challenge for us, I'd say right now, and actually I think has been an overarching obstacle we've dealt with since the get-go, I would say would be that finding support outside of ourselves. So we've been trying for a long time to get a publisher or investor to like back us or sign us, and going to them, showing them the game, getting feedback from them, making every fix imaginable, going back again, catering everything we've done to from our marketing to everything else to try to get one of them to just finally decide to bite, and none of them have ever bit. No, not once. I'm actually it's been a relief because we kind of gave up on it, and decided that we would focus more on gamers and hoping that they would eventually, they would help us get the game to fruition. But I would say that has been our toughest obstacle. I think it's a number of factors. One being that this is even though we have a lot of experienced devs on our team that have published titles under their belts, this is our first title together. And so, despite the fact that we have like a full vertical slice that shows that we can develop what we're saying we can develop, I think that it immediately holds us back. And then, and also the fact that we went for a bigger game to start with. Like, I guess we probably could have made that little cat game first and then done Kristala. And that might have been smart. We probably should have done that. But, I couldn't resist. I wanted to make something that I was, that I thought was really cool. And it kind of just happened on its own. I don't remember us actively saying like, oh, we're going to take this path instead. We're going to actually make things very difficult for ourselves. We're going to go this way.
I don't think anybody does that as a conscious choice, but
it just kind of happened.
It's an interesting point that you make, the fact that, and I like what you said about the moment we decided that we were just going to give up on trying to find funding. Actually, we felt a bit relief, because now it's just you trying to carve out your own path without having to worry about, you have to worry about funding at some point.
Funding is unfortunately a constant problem, but yes.
Yeah, exactly. And I assume you will do Kickstarter and all that. I know that you have a Kickstarter page ready to go and to be launched at any point. So yeah, but at least you have that kind of mindset where, okay, we're just on our own and we're gonna make it, and we're gonna work it out. And I think that's really powerful. So,
yeah, it honestly has been quite freeing, even though it's still stressful in its own way. It's extremely stressful, not gonna lie. But yeah.
Well, it frees us up too to like focus solely on the dev. Like, sure, yeah, we're focused on like the Kickstarter and building our Patreon community and enriching our Discord community and all those things, but like we're not focused on continuously updating pitch decks, for example, or always trying to find events where we're pitching. Like, I mean, we still do outreach, don't get us wrong, but like, yeah, it's just nice to be like, okay, we are focusing on getting done even quicker.
Yeah.
The
Plus,
development.
All the time we wasted on being told it was one thing or another, fixing that thing, going back to them and being told, oh, actually, now I'm making up some other thing because I can't tell you the real reason I don't like you. Mm-hmm. And that's really what it comes down to. So they just wasted a lot of our time.
That's what I was going to say. Like,
and resources. Yeah, it was pretty frustrating. Like, if I were to tell a newer studio today, like, how they might want to go about going for funding, I would probably tell them to do what we're doing now, much sooner, and first, just try to get gamers to back you first, because they're honestly more reliable. And then you can, you're catering your game to what people want to buy anyway, not what publishers are telling you they think someone might want to buy, or they're just lying to you to make you go away. Mm-hmm. Which is usually usually what they're doing.
Very, very important points there, and I think a lot of people are going to find this kind of advice useful, because there's that tendency to we want to grow, we want to maybe be this big, or at least even mid-sized studio that gets funding from a big publisher and such, so we don't have to worry about marketing and all of that, which a lot of indie developers find very challenging, to be fair. But as Sarah said, it can be fun as well. But yeah, it's having that knowledge that gamers are what you're aiming for, and not necessarily pleasing any big publisher here or there. But yeah, but actually that leads me to another question. How did you grow? I mean, you started pretty small, of course. It was just the three of you at some point, and then you started expanding. How did you get to the size where you are now, and has that brought any challenges? Because I feel like a lot of indie game developers or studios would like to get to a bigger size to just develop bigger games, but is that really as easy as it sounds? Because I feel like it isn't.
No, it's not. Okay, so we've always had a relatively larger team, just because we got kind of lucky. When I first started looking for people to work with us, I kept just stumbling across people who happened to be cool and had a skill. So our first volunteer on the team was one was Tiffany's good friend Kristen, who was a writer, and then and the other was he still works with us. His name is Cass, and he's a 3D modeler. And I found him because I commented on some post on Facebook that seemed like it was like trying to find the word. It was like a scam post about you can be a game tester today. Go to game tester school. And I was like, don't pay these people. That's basically what I commented.
Yeah, exactly.
Don't
game
do this.
Game tester school?
No one goes to game tester school. And then Cass wrote me, and he was like, yeah, agreed, basically. And that's how
I never knew that. That's funny.
Yeah, and that's how
I love that story.
that's how I met Cass, because I was like, wait, you're a 3D modeler? I could totally use you if you want to make a game with me. I've got a couple of friends, so
I could totally use you.
Use your skills.
Yep, use your skills. Yes. But yeah, he was our first volunteer, and then he introduced us to our second volunteer, who's also still working with us, and her name's Bianca, and she's also a 3D modeler, but now she actually works more heavily in the marketing department, because it just turned out she's really good at that, so that's just kind of what happened. But yeah, we have a couple of people that have been with us since the very beginning, but what the natural course of things when you go at first with a volunteer team is a lot of change and turnover, because you can't expect a lot from somebody you're not paying, right? So we started out with this whole idea that, like, we're students, we're trying to learn, and this is the best way to learn, and you should, if you want to come learn with us, that would be awesome. And so we got a lot of really good developers that way. We did eventually get some funding a couple of years in, and that's where things changed. And so we started, instead of finding volunteers all the time, we were able to start seeking out a bit more experienced developers and expanding a bit. So that's when we went from having like a team of 20 volunteers to getting to about the size that we are now. And you know what? I will say, finding the developers for us, if we were a localized team in one place, that would be hard. But we have no restrictions on where we can hire from. And really, the only restriction is, can you speak understandable English? And that, and we've even had people who really can't, but they use a translator and they get by well enough that it's okay. So, like, with that in mind, I never have any trouble finding new developers, to be honest with you. Because I can look anywhere, which is great. I think that's the way of the future in terms of the way that tech.
I wouldn't say your studio is crowdsourced, but it does kind of make me think of that word, because it feels like it had so many volunteers, like a turnaround of volunteers just wanted to work with you guys and work on your game, and it's probably also a very multicultural and an inclusive team as well. So how are you finding that? As in, how do you think that's, because I do believe that diversity in terms of creativity and all that can really boost creativity by bringing maybe a fresh perspective into the mix and all of that. So how are you finding that experience? Would you say that it is important to have such a motivated and multicultural team?
Hell yeah. Yeah. I wouldn't do it any other way. I love it. I have friends all over the planet. And like, I go somewhere and I usually have someone within a couple hours I can like hang out with, which is awesome. But not just that, it's brought so much unique insight into the game. I think it's part of why Kristala is so cool, because we get these ideas that we never would have gotten from somebody based on their cultural background or some sort of thing that they know that we would never know. What was the point of that? I lost my train of thought there in the middle. But another really good part about it is that one of the biggest expenses that a studio has to deal with when it comes to marketing is like, you can choose not to do this, but it's still, you should do some of it, and it's going to conventions, right? And the conventions are worldwide; they're everywhere. As a smaller indie team with a smaller budget, it can be really hard to go to more than just a couple of them because they're so expensive. And what's the most expensive part is the travel and the accommodations, right? But if you have somebody who's somewhat local, you're cutting a big chunk of that out. So that's another good thing having people all over the world.
Really interesting, yeah. Okay. Well, I will come back to this topic towards the end, because I have another question that I'd like to ask you. But let's break it up a little bit with a bit of a fun question.
Okay.
About Kristala, actually. I'd like to talk about the game now. And I see you have glasses with cat ears. So you've got headphones.
I didn't even realize I was doing double cat ears today.
and I see that you have a cat too. And so I suppose you all love cats. You're all cat people. Where does the inspiration for Kristala come from?
What's actually kind of funny about that is that the cat idea came from Tiffany, and she's our resident dog person. Actually, she loves dogs.
I do have a cat.
She has a cat, but she's got a lot of more dogs than cats.
Yeah, my husband is the cat person, and he's the reason that we have the cat. So I have 2 dogs. So and then
that's cool. I didn't know that either. I didn't know
yeah, yeah. Andrew is the cat person. So.
Okay.
Yeah. So yeah.
I know it's pretty funny that it ended up that way because in the beginning when we talked about it, I didn't even realize that you weren't a cat person because you brought up the cat game, and I was like, ooh, I do like cats. I've got a lot of cats. And,
well, I mean, like, think about it though. Like a cat, you play as a cat, and then think about playing as a dog. Like, I'd rather play as a cat. They're more agile, they move better, they're cooler looking, they have sassy personalities usually. Like,
and for an action RPG, I feel like it's better, yeah.
Yeah, that's what you need.
Plus, dogs are really good as companions,
yes.
I've noticed in games. Like, for instance, Dogmeat in Fallout 4. He's my favorite dog companion.
Yeah, cats just make better player characters.
Yeah,
so.
I agree.
Yeah.
I appreciate your ability to see past, and
I can admit it, like I appreciate cats.
I heard about this game not too long. It was like a couple of years ago, and it was about the main character was a corgi, and a corgi with a machine gun, and he just was like it was a really intense shooter. I need to find that game because
there's a really cool game that I'm looking forward to, which is Squirrel with a Gun.
Yeah,
oh man,
they've been getting a lot of attention for that one. Squirrel with a Gun.
We actually reached out to them at one point because one of a struggle we had initially was like, how do we put fur on our characters? And that squirrel has gorgeous fur. So I was like,
that's true. Yeah,
that's right.
How are you doing this? And so, we shared some sort. Squirrel with a gun. That's so funny.
I think it's one person because the social media account does feel very personal in terms of tone of voice. So yeah, I feel like there's just one person winging it with that squirrel with a gun. So yeah.
They found a good little niche there that people are like, that's so hilarious.
And honestly, I'm on board with that. I think it is going to be hilarious.
Yeah, totally. Absolutely, kind of like the Goat Simulator game.
Oh my god!
All right, all those silly games over there. Yeah,
totally. But yeah, with
I'm a big fan
Kristala,
of Bossa Studios, so yeah.
Oh, sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off there.
Oh, no.
You should edit that out. I'm embarrassed now. I was going to say something about Kristala there, and I totally got messed up. Something about the cats. Oh, right. So outside of that, the inspiration was essentially that, we started with the cat thing, and then we ended up kind of morphing into deciding it would be more of like an action RPG kind of game, and because we really wanted to go with the 3D thing, which I mentioned before. But nowadays, when we got more people on the team and we kind of got some more insight, for our early builds of it, Kristala was just cat souls. I mean, honestly, to be blunt, it was pretty much cat souls, and because we were just making what we knew. Like, what is the the formula I understand best in video games? It's that one. So we started there, and then we started expanding once we got a more people on the team, a bit more input. Like, she used to not jump, which is pretty silly if you think about it.
Yeah, well, being a cat, yeah, exactly.
Yeah, it's funny that because we were like, oh, that's going to be hard, That's pretty much where that came from. But so now she jumps and she traverses. We have a whole traversal system, and so it's more like it kind of leans more into being like a cross between Sekiro and Assassin's Creed versus like just being cat souls, which I think makes a lot more sense with like an agile feline player. It gives us so much room for her to just move like a ninja, which is really fun, and I love it.
I think the combat system works, and what I enjoyed from the demo was the exploration and how you can actually approach an area vertically as well. You can just jump on the ceilings and just on roofs, the rooftops, and just jump between those and just traverse and attack people and attack enemies, which are rats from what I can gather, or mice. Stealthily,
some of them,
which is something that some of them are, some of them are. Now I've asked you before when you realized you wanted to be game developer or when you wanted to work in games. Why are you working in games right now? What is it that drives you forward? What is it that you love about what you're doing?
Tiffany, you go first. I'm always talking.
For me, it's the creativity. It's the ability to make up something that's just so ridiculously unbelievable, and then creating it and being like, "Yep, there it is. This is real now." So, that's like my main thing. Is I look forward to getting up in the morning and doing this because it's not a job anymore. It's like this is our passion, and we get to do it every day. So, for me, the creativity, and working with the group that we have is a really big part of that. Apparently, she agrees.
She agrees, yeah.
She
Like,
agrees.
go, Mom.
And yeah, I mean, it's a lot of fun. So
So would you say you're making the Unreal real and using Unreal Engine? Oh my god, that was such a bad joke. Go on, yeah.
I love it. The Unreal real with
The Unreal Real.
Oh, I love that. I'm gonna steal
quite
that
good.
now.
All right, yeah. Don't credit me for it. Just go with it. Yeah.
Don't tell anyone
quote
that was
you.
my joke. Thanks.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's kind of hard for me to answer sometimes because I personally, I feel the same way as Tiffany. I got into it because this is my passion, and now I have a job that is a lot more fun. But I will say that since going from being like, I miss the days when I used to be our animator, and I've been a lot of different things. But for a while I was our animator, and I think that was the funnest point because I used to just spend all day like obsessing over micro movements of the character and stuff. And now I have to just it's this constant shift of different things all the time. Like, I gotta do. I'm jumping around constantly. It's a little more intense and stressful. It used to be way more like I understand why developers enjoy not being the boss. I don't hate it. I love what I do, and I wouldn't do anything else. And I can't even imagine myself not doing this now. It would be really weird. But I definitely do kind of miss those days where I was just a dev. and focusing on like, one or two things. Because exactly, the creativity is really, really fun. But I would say my favorite part about what I do now is just the fact that I always know what's going on in every department. Like I'm like the go-between for everything. And it's made it so that I know a lot about a lot of different things, or at least a little about most things. So, and in a way that I wouldn't if I wasn't the one who was just bossing everyone around and figuring out how to make everything work together.
Yeah, I would have to agree with that too. As I've said multiple times, I'm not a developer, so like I can't program, I can't create animations, but what I can do is add to the narrative design of Kristala. And so as an avid reader and always gravitating towards like fantasy stories in general, when I pick something up to read, it's really cool to like take that love and apply it to like something that we're creating together. So like, yeah, it's just that dreaming up of new worlds, of new creatures, of things that don't physically exist in our world. That's
True.
priceless to me. It's so much fun.
That's actually definitely still one of my favorite parts of the job is like going to the artists and being like, "Can you make me a lizard man? Thank you."
Lizard man.
Hey, that lizard man is really cool too.
He is. He's really cool.
So that lizard man actually became reality. That's good.
Like
Okay.
almost every weird idea we've had has become something. It's
Yeah.
great.
That's great.
Love
Yeah,
it.
right.
That's
So-
definitely my favorite part. That and just the time I've spent basically making up the story with Sarah and Tiffany. Most of the story was we've had writers work with us, and we don't currently have a narrative designer, but we will need one again soon. But a lot of the story is just us. We used to have these meetings every week and come up with the world, and we came up with a language together. Like that was super fun.
I see a dog in the background in the meantime. Yeah.
Oh,
Ooh, so fancy.
Ellie.
Yeah.
She is.
She stopped like, yes.
She's like, yes,
Food.
that's my name.
That's my name. Right. So I did mention that I wanted to go back to that topic at some point, and I think I want to ask this question. Now you don't have to answer because I know it can be an uncomfortable one to deal with, but I know that unfortunately the video games industry has a few problems, and one of them is toxic masculinity.
Yeah.
Being 3 co-founders or directors of a studio and being 3 female co-founder directors, has that ever impacted someone's perception of the studio, have you ever seen someone just maybe look down on you because you're a woman, and maybe that has led to some preconceptions, or of course all unfounded? But yeah, I'd like to hear this from you.
I was kind of holding back on this before when I was talking about publishers, and
you know what? I kind of got there. Yes.
Yeah. Because I don't want to. I can't necessarily say that 100% this is the reasoning, because they don't say it. They can't say it. I mean, if they said it, that would be pretty bad for them. But but I have a feeling personally that it's been a big factor in some of us, like, I feel like Kristala is a pretty cool looking game. I've seen games half as developed get deals, and yet we still can't. So it's like, well, is it us? Is it, I like to point to the fact that it's our first game together, but I also think it's also that. And we've seen some things in the industry, I don't know if I should even say any of this. I should probably keep it to myself. Yeah, but yeah, we've definitely experienced some stuff.
And we've had to think about things in a specific way. Like, for example, when we were getting a lot of no from publishers, we started wondering, should we send one of our male teammates to pitch for us?
Oh, that's horrible.
Yeah, or in our marketing, we've had to be like, should we say loud and proud that we're a women-owned studio? Now, obviously, we decided, yes, we should, because F that, I'm not going to swear on this podcast, but but it's just interesting the way that we have to, like, really carefully think about certain things that maybe a male counterpart wouldn't, you know what I mean? So, yeah.
This is my
Luckily, though, we haven't had a bunch of, like, just people out in the, like, internet verse give us too much shit for it.
The too much shit is the too much part is interesting, but
yeah. Gamers don't seem to be upset about it in the same way.
No,
that's really good. Okay.
But though, you never know though. I saw an article the other day where a bunch of gamers were mad about some really stupid thing that had to do with a woman being involved in something. I don't remember what it was, but I don't remember what it was now. But maybe they were mad about a female protagonist again. I don't know.
Again, exactly. I guess it's the key word there.
Whatever. It happens all the time. But I mean, it seems in general though, I would say most of the gamers that we ever interact with, they don't care about that. In fact, they're like, oh, good, different perspective.
Yeah, I suppose you managed to build a very supportive and inclusive community and around you, which is really great. And I always say that people kind of build the community that they deserve. But yeah, so let's close it on more of a fun note. Imagine writing a letter to yourselves, but 10 years younger. What would you say?
How old am I now?
I know, I was like,
Okay. All right, yeah, okay, so that was right at the beginning of my, not beginning, I was just in my software career. I'd say, don't flounder in this quite as long. This is boring, and you know it is. Stop lying to yourself. Go do something fun with your time. That's pretty much what I would say.
Right.
I think I would tell myself to, like, always say yes. Maybe not always, but say yes to, like, awesome and new opportunities, even if you're scared, because that's what I did with this studio, because I was like, I'm not the most knowledgeable gamer, and, like, I don't know, should I be an owner of this game studio? I didn't know anything about game development, so I think that's what I would tell myself, though, because it was really exhilarating to say yes, even though I kind of was like, I don't know, should I?
Oh, don't worry, sir. I've been writing for about 5 years, maybe more now, and I still don't know what I'm doing. So that never goes away.
Well, we're doing a good job at faking it then.
Yeah.
fake it till you make it, right?
Yeah. Tiffany, what's your letter to your younger self?
I saw this question on the doc, and I was thinking about it all morning. And I part of me wants to be like, it's okay, take that jump, like don't be so afraid, But then the other part of me is kind of like, don't say anything to my former self, because I think that everything that we've gone through up until this point has happened for a reason. Like, I'm a big believer in, like, karma and, life advice. And I don't think that, okay, apparently she agrees. I think that, like, if there were things that I would warn myself against, I might not have learned from that situation and, like, done things differently in the future. So that was kind of a hard question for me, because I'm like, yeah, part of me is just like, it's okay, keep going, like, just, you're gonna have a great time. So, but the other part is like, you know what, it's fine to make mistakes, and it's fine to maybe, do whatever the wrong way or whatever, well, a mistake. And as long as you're, same thing. As long as you're learning from that. For me, I've always said this, and it's really cheesy, but I'm going to say it. It's not a mistake if you learn from it. It's just life.
So true.
That makes sense.
Yeah, and so I'm just like, I kind of always think about that when I'm, like, thinking about things. But, like, no, I learned, and I'm not going to do that again, or I'm going to do it differently. So, not necessarily a mistake, like, probably could have done it better, but at least it was a learning experience, and it made me stronger, a better person because of it. So, she's done.
That's no, but that's I think that's really powerful and compelling, and I love it. And it's funny enough, one of the design principles behind Outer Wilds, that failure is not failure. It's just it's just a chance to learn. It's just new information. And that's why I love that game very much, and it's one of my favorite ones ever. Yeah, such a good game. Oh, that was my window. I don't know if you heard it. But also, I do feel a bit sorry for your younger self, Tiffany, because she's going to receive a letter that's pretty much empty because you don't want to say
just empty. And I'll be like, so typical of me. That's just so me.
Cool. Thanks for the advice.
On brand. Thanks. Thanks a lot for nothing.
Right, and just to really wrap it up, a very fun question. I really like asking this one to every guest. If you had unlimited budget and time, what game would you create?
All of them?
All of them.
We actually
More cats, I guess.
More cats.
I was gonna say Kristala.
Yeah, I would I would just
definitely.
make the ultimate budget version of Kristala. We actually when we started planning out all this stuff, we did multiple scopes and versions based on different budgets so that we could tailor our pitches accordingly, right? So there's a version that is the big money version where we get to do full multiplayer, and there's all these the world is bigger and everything. There's a living world where you leave an area and come back to it, and different stuff happens. And yeah, I would make that game. That's my dream game. It'd be really cool. Maybe someday we'll get to make that version of Kristala in a sequel or something.
I was gonna say we have enough story content for like a sequel and even a prequel. Like we've planned it out.
Perfect.
Yeah.
Story wise.
Yeah. Well, I get, and I say this every single time, I get two answers to this question. One is I would just be doing what I'm doing but bigger, and the other is I would do an MMORPG. I have no idea why, but it's just those two. But funny. I think once you say, I think when someone says I would just be doing what I'm doing now but bigger, it shows that person is on the right track, and they kind of know what they're doing. So yeah. Right, so I think it's been a very, very fun hour with you three. It's been an amazing little chat and conversation. Just some parting words from you. Where can other people find you? And if they do, how can they support you right now?
So you had mentioned our Twitter earlier at ACS_games. It's essentially that across all socials, except our TikTok is at Kristala Game. You can also find us at Astral. Yeah. Yeah, I don't know why. I forget why we went with that there. But anyway, the TikTok's doing really well too. Everyone should check it out. You can also find us, of course, at astralclocktowerstudios.com. I mentioned earlier we have a very rich and diverse Discord community and a growing Patreon community. And then we had also mentioned that we have a Kickstarter campaign that is coming up in July. And if you love action RPG games or games like Sekiro or Assassin's Creed, if you love cats, if you love metal, please go to our page and follow the campaign ahead of launch. We would love to have you, and we promise there's some really cool rewards planned.
Well, you can tell that Sarah's the marketing gal here because most people just say,
Oh, that's why I kept my mouth shut.
I literally muted myself, so I was like, Sarah's got this.
Yep.
Yeah, no, most people just say, "Oh yeah, follow my Twitter, wishes my game, please." That's a whole barrage of links. I will put all of this in the
wishlist
description.
Kristala on Steam.
Of course, yeah, that's I will put all of these in the description of the episode, of course, for the listeners. But yeah, thank you so much to the three of you and to Astral Clocktower Studios for doing such an amazing little game there. I'm sure it's going to turn out great. But yeah, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you,
Thanks
Anthony.
for having us.
It was fun.
And that's a wrap on yet another episode of the Indie Diaries podcast. Thank you so much for listening, and thank you to Astral Clocktower Studios, all three of you, Allie, Sarah, and Tiffany, for being such amazing guests for the show. It's been my honor and pleasure to host you here, and I hope you enjoyed it just as much as I did. So, if you guys enjoyed the episode, please subscribe to the show. There's a lot more coming soon. Maybe follow the show on Twitter at the Indie Diarist, and if you want to join the Discord server for the Indie Diarist, which is slowly but surely growing, you can find an invite link to the Discord server on the indiediarist.com. Lastly, if you are an indie game developer yourself, please get in touch. I will find a spot for you, I promise. There's a lot going on with the show right now, but I'm always up for featuring new developers with interesting stories to tell, just like Allie, Sarah, and Tiffany here. So, remember to support Astral Clocktower Studios by going straight to their Kickstarter campaign or wishlisting their game on Steam, and I guess I will speak to you in the next episode of the Indie Diarist.